There is a question I have been asking college students for over 40 years. I walk into the lecture hall. I look at 300 bright young faces. These are kids from Harvard, from Wharton, from MIT. They have perfect GPAs. They have recommendation letters from senators and CEOs. They have spent $200,000 on tuition. And I asked them one simple question. If I could buy 10% of the future earnings of any one of your classmates for the rest of their life, who would I choose? And more importantly, why? Now think about this carefully. I am not asking who has the highest GPA. I am not asking who scored highest on the entrance exam. I am not asking who has the most impressive resume. I am asking who is going to generate the most economic value over a lifetime. And every single time I do this exercise, the students realize something that shakes them to their core. The person they choose is almost never the smartest person in the room. It is the person with the best skills, not academic skills, not test-taking skills, real skills, the kind of skills that no professor has ever taught them, the kind of skills that cannot be graded on a curve, the kind of skills that pay dividends long after the diploma is turned yellow in a drawer. Yet this is the great fraud of our time. We have built the most expensive education system in human history. Americans alone carry $1.7 trillion in student loan debt. That number is so large it is almost meaningless. Let me make it real for you. If you stacked $1.7 trillion in $1 bills, the pile would reach the moon and back 3 times. And what did all that money buy? It bought credentials. It bought letters after your name. It bought the right to say, I went to a good school. But it did not buy wealth. It did not buy financial independence. And it certainly did not buy the operating system you need to thrive in the real world. I want to be clear about something. I am not against education. I love learning. I read 500 pages a day. I have read every day of my life since I was 6 years old. Knowledge is the most powerful compound interest machine in the universe. But there is a critical difference between learning and schooling. Learning is what you do when you pick up a book that changes the way you see the world. Schooling is what you do when you memorize the textbook so you can pass the test and forget everything by Monday. The education system was not designed to make you wealthy. It was designed in the Prussian era to produce obedient workers for factories. It was designed to teach you to sit still, follow instructions, raise your hand for permission, and complete tasks assigned by a superior authority. These are not the skills of a capitalist. These are the skills of a well-trained employee. And the system has gotten very good at what it was designed to do. It produces millions of credentialed, obedient, deeply indebted workers every single year. I have watched this tragedy play out for decades. A young person goes to college, they study hard, they graduate with honors, they walk across the stage, their parents cry with pride, and then they enter the real world. And the real world does not care about their GPA. The real world does not care about their thesis on 17th century French literature. The real world asks one question and one question only: what value can you create? And most graduates have no answer. They have been trained to consume information, not to create value. They have been trained to analyze problems, not to sell solutions. They have been trained to work inside a system, not to build one. So they do the only thing they know how to do. They get a job. They start selling their time. And because they have $100,000 in student loans, they cannot afford to take risks. They cannot afford to fail. They are shackled to the paycheck before they even cash the first one. The degree that was supposed to set them free has actually locked them in a cage, a very expensive cage with a very impressive nameplate on the door, but a cage nonetheless. Today we are going to talk about the 5 skills that actually generate wealth. These are not academic disciplines. You will not find them in any university course catalog. They are not sexy. They are not glamorous. They will not impress anyone at a cocktail party, but they will make you more money than any master's degree on the planet. These are the skills that separate the person who earns a paycheck from the person who signs the paycheck. Let us begin. We start with the first skill. And I must warn you, when you hear what it is, you might be disappointed. You might think it is too simple. You might think, Warren, I already know this. But I promise you, you do not know this. Because if you did, you would already be wealthy. The first skill that pays more than a master's degree is the skill of selling. I can already hear the resistance. Nobody wants to be a salesperson. The word itself carries a stigma. When you think of a salesperson, you think of the used car dealer with the bad suit and the fake smile. You think of the telemarketer who interrupts your dinner. You think of manipulation and sleaze and dishonesty. And that is exactly why this skill is so valuable. Because while you are running away from it, the people who master it are getting rich. Now, let me tell you a hard truth. Every single person on earth is in sales. You just do not realize it. When you go on a job interview, you are selling yourself. When you ask someone on a date, you are selling yourself. When you present a business plan to your boss, you are selling an idea. When you try to convince your child to eat vegetables, you are selling a concept. The question is not whether you sell. The question is whether you are good at it or terrible at it. And most people are terrible at it because nobody taught them how to do it. The education system teaches you to prove you are right. Sales teaches you to make people feel understood. These are completely opposite skills. In school, you write an essay presenting your argument with evidence and logic. You are trying to prove a point. In sales, you shut your mouth. You listen. You ask questions. You figure out what the other person actually needs. And then you present your solution in their language, not yours. I learned this lesson when I was 6 years old. I went door to door selling chewing gum. My grandfather gave me packs of Wrigley's, and I walked around the neighborhood knocking on doors. Most 6-year-olds would say, "Would you like to buy some gum?" That is a terrible sales pitch. It makes it easy to say no. I learned quickly. I would say, "I have juicy fruit and spearmint. Which flavor would you like?" I was not asking if they wanted to buy. I was asking which one they preferred. That one tiny shift in language changed everything. It assumes the sale. It frames the decision. I was 6 years old, and I had already learned something they do not teach at Harvard Business School. Now let me connect this to the mathematics of wealth. If you are an engineer and you can build a brilliant product but you cannot sell it, your product dies in a garage. If you are a doctor and you have excellent clinical skills but you cannot communicate with patients, your practice stays small. If you are a lawyer and you know the law inside out but you cannot persuade a jury, you lose cases. But if you are an average engineer who can sell, you become the CEO. If you are an average doctor who can sell, you build a medical empire. If you are an average lawyer who can sell, you become a partner. Selling is the great multiplier. It takes whatever talent you already have and amplifies it by a factor of 10 or even 100. The reason most people avoid this skill is because selling requires you to face rejection. And rejection triggers the same neural pathways as physical pain. Your brain literally cannot tell the difference between someone saying no to your product and someone punching you in the face. The amygdala fires the same way. This is why people avoid cold calls. This is why people avoid asking for the raise. This is why people sit in cubicles doing excellent work and never getting promoted. They are waiting to be discovered. They are waiting for someone to notice their brilliance and reward them accordingly. But the world does not work that way. The world does not reward quality. The world rewards awareness of quality. The best product does not win. The best known product wins. Coca-Cola is not the best tasting drink in the world, but it is the best known drink in the world, and that is why I own $25 billion worth of their stock. Their moat is not the recipe. Their moat is the brand, and a brand is nothing more than a sales job repeated 1 billion times. So here is what you must do. You must desensitize yourself to rejection. You must go out and hear the word no so many times that it loses its sting. You must practice articulating value in simple, clear human terms. You must learn to listen more than you speak. If you spend $100 on a sales course and practice what you learned for 1 year, that investment will generate more wealth for you over your lifetime than a $200,000 MBA. I am not exaggerating. I am doing the math. A master's degree gives you a credential. Sales gives you an income. And in the long run, income always beats credentials. Now let us move to the second skill. This one is even more overlooked, and in many ways it is even more powerful. The second skill that pays more than a master's degree is the skill of writing clearly. When I say writing, I do not mean poetry. I do not mean fiction. I do not mean the kind of writing your English professor graded you on. I mean the ability to take a complex idea and put it on paper in a way that any human being can understand it in 30 seconds. Think about why this matters. In the modern economy, most of your communication is written. You send emails, you write reports, you craft proposals, you compose messages, you draft business plans, and the quality of your writing directly determines the quality of the opportunities that come to you. If you write a sloppy email, the reader assumes you think sloppily. If you write a confusing proposal, the client goes to your competitor. If you write a job application that sounds like every other job application, your resume goes straight into the trash. Clear writing is clear thinking made visible. If you cannot write a simple paragraph explaining what your business does, it means you do not understand what your business does. Writing forces you to organize the chaos in your head. It forces you to identify the core idea and strip away everything that is not essential. It is the ultimate discipline of thought. I write a letter to Berkshire Hathaway shareholders every single year. I have been doing this for decades. Do you know what my test is for that letter? Before I send it, I imagine my two sisters reading it. My sisters are intelligent women, but they are not financial professionals. If my sisters cannot understand what I am saying, I rewrite it. I do not use jargon. I do not use complicated financial terms when a simple word will do. I write as if I am sitting across the table having a conversation with a friend. This is incredibly rare. Walk into any corporation in America and pick up an internal memo. It will be filled with corporate jargon. It will say things like, we need to leverage our core competencies to synergize cross-functional deliverables and optimize our go-to-market strategy. What does that mean? It means absolutely nothing. It is a word salad designed to sound impressive while saying nothing. And the person who wrote it probably has a master's degree. Now look at the people who actually run the world. Jeff Bezos requires his executives to write 6-page memos instead of using PowerPoint presentations. Why? Because PowerPoint lets you hide behind bullet points and pretty graphics. A written memo has no place to hide. If the idea is weak, the writing will expose it. If the thinking is fuzzy, the sentences will betray it. The ability to write a clear, persuasive one-page document is worth more than an entire filing cabinet full of academic papers. A well-written sales email can generate $10,000 in a single afternoon. A well-written proposal can land a contract worth millions. A well-written book can change your industry and make you the authority in your field. Writing scales infinitely. You write it once and it can be read by 1 million people. It is what we call zero marginal cost leverage. It costs you nothing to replicate, but it works for you forever. Most people never develop this skill because they think they already know how to write. They pass their English class. They can construct a grammatically correct sentence. But constructing a sentence and persuading a reader are completely different activities. One is mechanics, the other is strategy. So here is what I want you to do. Every day I want you to practice writing one clear, simple paragraph about something complex. Take a complicated idea from your work and explain it as if you are talking to a 12-year-old. If you cannot do it, it means you do not understand the idea well enough. Keep simplifying until a child could grasp it. Do this every day for a year, and you will develop a superpower that 99% of your competitors do not have. You will become the person that people listen to, not because you are the loudest, but because you are the clearest. Now let us enter the third skill. This is the one that separates people who make a living from people who build a fortune. The third skill that pays more than a master's degree is the skill of financial literacy. And I do not mean the kind they pretend to teach in a weekend seminar. I mean the deep structural understanding of how money actually works. Here is the absurdity of our education system. A young person will spend 4 years studying advanced calculus, organic chemistry, and medieval history. They will memorize dates and formulas and theories that they will never use again for the rest of their lives. But at no point during those 4 years will anyone sit them down and explain how a credit card works. Nobody will explain compound interest. Nobody will explain the difference between an asset and a liability. Nobody will explain why inflation silently eats your savings. Nobody will explain how taxes work or why the tax code is written to reward owners and punish workers. This is not an accident. This is by design. The system benefits from your financial ignorance. Banks make money when you do not understand interest rates. Credit card companies make money when you do not understand compound debt. The government collects more taxes when you do not understand deductions. Wall Street sells you expensive mutual funds because you do not understand index funds. Your financial illiteracy is someone else's profit margin. Let me give you the most important financial concept you were never taught. It is called the difference between an asset and a liability. My friend Robert Kiyosaki popularized this idea, but it is a truth as old as commerce itself. An asset is something that puts money into your pocket. A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. That is it. That is the entire concept. It sounds simple, but most people get it catastrophically wrong. Most people think their house is an asset. It is not. If you have a mortgage, that house takes money out of your pocket every single month. It takes your mortgage payment, your insurance, your property taxes, your maintenance costs. It is a liability dressed up as an asset. Now, if you own a rental property that generates more income than it costs to maintain, that is an asset. The difference is not the object. The difference is the cash flow direction. Most people think their car is an asset. It is not. The moment you drive it off the lot, it begins losing value. It costs you gas, insurance, maintenance, and parking. It is a liability that depreciates every single day. The wealthy understand this distinction at a cellular level. Every dollar they earn, they ask one question: will this dollar come back to me with friends, or will it leave and never return? If the dollar goes into an index fund, it comes back with friends. It compounds, it multiplies. If the dollar goes into a new pair of shoes, it leaves and it never comes back. It is gone forever. Now, I am not saying you should never buy shoes. I am saying you should understand the true cost of every purchase. The true cost of a $200 pair of shoes is not $200. If you had invested that $200 in a broad market index fund and left it alone for 30 years at an average return of 10% per year, that $200 would have become $3,490. So the true cost of those shoes is $3,490. That is the opportunity cost. And nobody taught you that in school. Nobody told you that every time you spend a dollar today, you are killing the $17 that dollar could have become in 30 years. It is not that they are cheap. It is that they see money in 4 dimensions. They see the present value, the future value, the opportunity cost, and the compounding trajectory. Most people see money in 1 dimension. They see the price tag. They see $200 and they think, can I afford $200 right now? The wealthy see $200 and they think, is this purchase worth $3,490 to me? Financial literacy also means understanding the tax code. The tax code is not a punishment. It is a set of instructions. The government is telling you exactly what they want you to do with your money. If you earn a salary, you pay the highest tax rate. If you earn capital gains, you pay a lower rate. If you invest in real estate, you get depreciation deductions. If you start a business, you get write-offs. The government is incentivizing you to become an investor and a business owner. But if you do not understand the tax code, you will spend your entire life paying the maximum rate, while your neighbor who understands the code pays half as much on twice the income. This is not illegal. This is not immoral. This is mathematics. And mathematics does not care about your feelings. Here is your assignment. I want you to read 1 book on personal finance. Just 1. Start with the basics. Understand assets versus liabilities. Understand compound interest. Understand the tax advantages of different income types. This knowledge is free. It is available in any library, and it will save you or earn you more money over your lifetime than any master's degree in any subject. The most expensive thing in the world is not a university education. The most expensive thing in the world is financial ignorance. Now we arrive at the 4th skill. This one is uncomfortable. This one will make you squirm. But this is the skill that creates millionaires out of ordinary people every single day. The 4th skill that pays more than a master's degree is the skill of negotiation. Let me start with a number. The average person will negotiate a salary maybe 5 or 6 times in their entire career, and most of them will do it badly. They will accept the first offer. They will be afraid to ask for more. They will say, thank you so much for the opportunity, and sign whatever is put in front of them. And that single moment of weakness will cost them between $500,000 over their lifetime. Let me explain the math. If you accept a starting salary of $50,000 instead of negotiating it, the $55,000 difference does not just cost you $5,000. Every future raise you receive will be calculated as a percentage of your base salary. Every bonus will be calculated as a percentage of your base salary. Over a 40-year career with normal raises and promotions, that single failed negotiation at age 22 compounds into a loss of $600,000 or more. 1 conversation, 5 minutes of discomfort, $600,000, and you chose to skip it because you did not want to seem greedy. Now think about all the other negotiations in your life. You negotiate when you buy a car. You negotiate when you rent an apartment. You negotiate when you hire a contractor. You negotiate when you set prices for your own products or services. You negotiate with your spouse about finances. You negotiate with your children about responsibilities. Every single human interaction involves some form of negotiation, and the person who is better at it wins a slightly larger share of the pie every single time. Over a lifetime, those small slices compound into a mountain. The education system trained them to accept authority. It trained them to take what they are given. It trained them to be grateful for the opportunity. It trained them to believe that asking for more is rude. The wealthy see it completely differently. The wealthy know that everything is negotiable. The price on the sticker is not the price. The salary in the job listing is not the salary. The terms in the contract are not the terms. These are opening positions. They are the starting point of a conversation, not the end of one. The most important principle in negotiation is this: the person who is willing to walk away has all the power. This is why I talk so often about having what I call refusal power. If you have savings, if you have options, if you have alternatives, you can walk away from a bad deal. And the moment the other side senses that you can walk away, they move toward you. They become flexible. They become generous. They start negotiating against themselves. But if you are desperate, if you have no savings, if you need this job or this deal to survive, you have no leverage. You are a hostage, and hostages do not negotiate. They comply. This is why the first $20,000 you save is so critical. It is not just money. It is negotiation power. It is the ability to sit across the table from someone and think, I want this deal, but I do not need this deal. That internal calm changes everything. It changes your posture. It changes your tone. It changes the words you choose. And the other side can feel it. They can sense whether you are operating from strength or from fear, and they will adjust their offer accordingly. Charlie Munger once told me something I have never forgotten. He said, the best way to get what you want is to deserve what you want. This is deep. If you have built real skills, if you have a track record of delivering results, if you bring genuine value to the table, you do not need tricks. You do not need manipulation. You just need to clearly articulate what you are worth and have the courage to wait for the right deal. So here is your assignment. The next time you are in any transaction, whether it is buying a car, renewing a lease, or discussing your salary, I want you to make one additional ask, just one. When they give you the price, say, can you do any better than that? When they give you the offer, say, I was hoping for something closer to this number. You will be astonished by how often the other side says yes. You will be astonished by how much money has been sitting on the table your entire life, waiting for you to simply ask for it. The money does not go to the person who deserves it the most. It goes to the person who asks for it. Now we arrive at the fifth and final skill. This is the one I consider the most important. It is the skill that underlies all the others. It is the foundation upon which every fortune is built. And yet it is the one that most people actively avoid because it is the most painful. The fifth skill that pays more than a master's degree is the skill of emotional control. I want you to understand something about the biology of wealth. Your brain is the most sophisticated machine on the planet, but it was not designed for the modern financial world. Your brain was designed for the African savannah 200,000 years ago. It was designed to keep you alive in a world of predators, scarcity, and tribal conflict. It was designed to react instantly to threats. It was designed to follow the herd. It was designed to seek immediate gratification because in the savannah, there was no guarantee of tomorrow. These survival instincts served your ancestors well. But in the modern world, these same instincts are the primary reason you are poor. Let me explain. When the stock market drops 30%, your amygdala, the primitive fear center of your brain, fires a distress signal. It tells you danger, run, sell everything, get to safety. This is the exact same signal your ancestor received when a lion appeared in the grass. And just like your ancestor, you react without thinking. You sell your investments at the worst possible moment. You lock in your losses. You convert a temporary decline into a permanent destruction of capital. And 6 months later, when the market has recovered, you look at the numbers and you realize that if you had simply done nothing, if you had simply controlled your emotions for 6 months, you would have been fine. You would have been wealthier than before. This pattern repeats itself in every crash. In 2008, the market dropped over 50%. The people who panicked and sold lost everything. The people who stayed calm and kept buying became extremely wealthy. In 2020, the market crashed in March and recovered by August. 5 months. The people who sold in a panic missed the fastest recovery in stock market history. The people who bought during the panic made a fortune. Equaling the difference between these two groups is not intelligence. It is not information. It is emotional control. The ability to sit in a room while the world is screaming and do absolutely nothing. The ability to disconnect your primitive brain from your financial decisions. This is the single most valuable skill in investing and in life. But emotional control is not just about the stock market. It applies everywhere. When your boss insults you in a meeting, your emotional brain wants to fire back. It wants to defend your honor. But if you can pause, take a breath, and respond with calculated calm, you gain power, you gain respect. The person who controls their emotions controls the room. When a business deal falls apart, your emotional brain wants to panic. It wants to blame someone. It wants to scramble for a quick fix. But if you can step back, analyze what went wrong, and respond strategically, you save the deal or you find a better one. When your neighbor drives home in a brand new luxury car, your emotional brain feels a stab of envy. It whispers, you deserve that too. You should buy one. You work just as hard as they do. But if you can recognize that emotion for what it is, a primitive tribal comparison instinct that has no relevance to your financial future, you can smile, wave at your neighbor, and go back to compounding your wealth in silence. I have built my entire career on this skill. During the dot-com bubble in the late 1990s, every analyst on Wall Street said I was finished. They said I was a dinosaur who did not understand the new economy. My own investors were angry. The pressure to conform was immense. But I looked at the math. The math said these companies were worth nothing. And so I did nothing. I sat in my office in Omaha and I waited. And when the bubble burst and the geniuses went bankrupt, I was still standing. I was still compounding. During the 2008 financial crisis, when the entire world thought the financial system was collapsing, I wrote an op-ed in the newspaper. I said, I am buying American stocks. People thought I had lost my mind, but I had not lost my mind. I had controlled my emotions. I looked at the fear, I acknowledged it, and I set it aside. I looked at the value. The value was extraordinary, and I acted on the value, not on the fear. This is what emotional control looks like in practice. It is not the absence of emotion. I feel fear. I feel greed. I feel envy. I am a human being, but I have trained myself over decades of practice to observe these emotions without obeying them. I see the fear arise and I say, there you are, I see you, but I am not going to let you make my financial decisions. The education system does not teach this. In fact, the education system makes it worse. It teaches you to seek external validation. It teaches you to compete for grades. It teaches you to measure yourself against your peers. It fills your brain with anxiety about performance and ranking, and then it sends you into a financial world that is designed to exploit exactly those anxieties. Wall Street knows you are emotional. The entire financial media industry is built on triggering your emotions. They use words like crash and surge and crisis because these words light up your amygdala and keep you watching. They keep you trading. And every time you trade on emotion, someone on the other side of that trade is making money. That someone is usually calm. That someone has emotional control. The great irony is that the most profitable thing you can do in most situations is nothing. But doing nothing requires more discipline than doing something. It requires you to sit with discomfort. It requires you to tolerate uncertainty. It requires you to resist the urge to act. Here is your assignment for this final skill. The next time you feel a strong emotional urge to make a financial decision, I want you to wait 72 hours. If you feel the urge to sell a stock, wait 72 hours. If you feel the urge to make a large purchase, wait 72 hours. If you feel the urge to quit your job in anger, wait 72 hours. After 72 hours, the emotional intensity will have faded by 90%. And from that calmer state, you can evaluate the decision with logic instead of adrenaline. This one habit alone, the 72-hour rule, will save you more money than any degree in the world. Now let us pull everything together. We have talked about 5 skills. We have talked about selling. We have talked about writing clearly. We have talked about financial literacy. We have talked about negotiation. And we have talked about emotional control. None of these skills are taught in any university on earth. None of them require a degree to learn. None of them require expensive equipment or special connections. They are available to anyone with the discipline to practice them. But here is the deeper truth that I want you to carry with you. These 5 skills are not independent. They are an interconnected system. They feed into each other. They compound. If you can sell, you can negotiate better. If you can write clearly, you can sell more effectively. If you understand financial literacy, you know what to negotiate for. If you have emotional control, you can execute all 4 of the other skills under pressure without cracking. This is what I mean when I talk about an operating system. A degree gives you knowledge in one narrow domain. An operating system gives you the ability to function effectively in any domain. The person with the operating system will always beat the person with the degree because domains change, industries collapse, technologies become obsolete. But the operating system is permanent. It works in any economy, in any era, in any country. I started with nothing but these skills. I did not inherit a fortune. I did not have insider connections. I did not have access to technology or information that was unavailable to others. What I had was an operating system. I could sell an idea to an investor. I could write a clear letter to my shareholders. I understood the mathematics of money at a fundamental level. I knew how to negotiate a deal that was fair to both sides, and I could control my emotions when the world was falling apart. That operating system has generated over $100 billion in wealth. Not because I am a genius, not because I was lucky, but because I spent my life building skills that compound, while most people spent their lives collecting credentials that depreciate. The master's degree on your wall is a snapshot. It captures what you knew on one specific day in your early 20s. It does not grow. It does not compound. It does not adapt to a changing world. But the skills we talked about today are living things. They grow every time you practice them. They compound every year. They become more valuable as you age, not less. The world is full of overqualified, underskilled people. They have walls covered with certificates and bank accounts covered in dust. They spent their youth memorizing answers to questions nobody is asking. And now they sit in cubicles wondering why the system that promised them success has left them feeling empty. I do not want that for you. I want you to close the textbook and open the real world. I want you to stop studying theories and start practicing skills. I want you to spend less time proving how smart you are and more time proving how useful you are. Because in the final analysis, the market does not pay for intelligence. It does not pay for credentials. It does not pay for effort. The market pays for value delivered. And value is a skill, not a degree. So tonight, when you go home, I want you to ask yourself one question. If your degree was erased tomorrow, if every credential you have ever earned disappeared overnight, what could you actually do? What value could you create with nothing but your skills and your character? If the answer makes you uncomfortable, good. That discomfort is the beginning of real education. The 5 skills are waiting for you. They cost almost nothing to learn. A sales book costs $15. A writing course costs $50. A personal finance book is free at the library. A negotiation seminar is a weekend of your time. And emotional control costs nothing but discipline. The total cost of these 5 skills is less than 1 month's payment on a student loan. But the return on investment is infinite. Because unlike a degree, these skills do not depreciate. They do not expire. They do not become obsolete. They compound. And in the game of wealth, the person who compounds wins. Always. The door to this education is open. It has always been open. You do not need to apply. You do not need permission. You do not need to take on debt. You just need to start practicing. You need to start today. And you need to continue tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that. The world will keep telling you that you need another degree, another certification, another credential. Ignore the noise. Build the skills. Let the results speak for themselves, because in the end, nobody asks a wealthy person where they went to school. They just ask, how did you do it? And now you know the answer. That's all. Thanks for watching.